So Daredevil Season 3 has been out for a few weeks now, and a lot of people have seen it all the way through. And overall, the show has been a critical success, being praised as a true return to form for Marvel Netflix. I have already reviewed the series in full, so be sure to check it out. I'll link it in the description below if you are interested. But there have been a lot of rumours going around the press that viewership for Daredevil dropped by 55%, but as pointed out by Captain Midnight on Twitter, these articles are complete bogus. From what I've seen, fan reception seems very positive, and a lot of people still appear to be talking about the show. Personally, I thoroughly enjoyed Daredevil Season 3. It was excellent storytelling, backed by fantastic performances, excellent fight choreography, and explored some interesting themes concerning morality. But I'm not here to talk about what I loved about Daredevil. I think there's been done enough by myself and fellow YouTubers. What I want to talk about is something I touched on in my review video, and that is the disappointing season finale. In my opinion, the finale really let the series down, and for me, it was not a satisfying conclusion. So I want to jump into this video about what I didn't like about the finale.
Julie and I wish you the absolute best.
Firstly, the episode was rushed, which is not a problem that usually occurs within Marvel Netflix shows. I know I always complain about these series labouring to the end, but to conclude the whole 13 episode season in about 35 minutes, with 15 minutes at the end to wrap it up in a neat little bow, it just doesn't work. Series of this nature will have some sort of build up, around 2 or so episodes before the finale, building tension between the protagonist and antagonist, where we as the audience feel the only way this can conclude is by a huge finale ending fight. By the start of this finale, there has been no direct tension built between Daredevil and Fisk. They've had no initial confrontation in this series, and also no idea had been given by either Fisk or Daredevil what their final ultimate plan was to be. Without these elements in the finale, the episode becomes jarring and feels rushed, as if the writers had suddenly realised they had reached the last episode and they needed Fisk, Daredevil and Bullseye to quickly get in their respective places for this finale fight to happen, when Daredevil could have manipulated Bullseye the previous episode, setting up the final confrontation and giving audiences an idea of what was to come. So let's get on to the final fight. I have an unpopular opinion on the finale fight between Fisk, Daredevil and Bullseye. It's not very good. Now, before people go crazy, let me explain why. The fight lacks creativity. Whilst I praise Daredevil and Bullseye's initial confrontation in the newspaper office, this fight doesn't show the strengths and weaknesses of each character nearly as much. The fight scene utilises a lot of close-up shots and cuts, which can hint towards the actors not knowing how to fight properly, and it comes across as sloppy. There is also a lot of grabbing and tossing people around, which I guess this was to show that this fight was fueled more by hatred and brute strength rather than technique, but again, this comes off as sloppy. The brute strength character is Fisk, whilst Daredevil is more speed and being able to take a hit, and Bullseye can throw projectiles to near lethal hits. This wasn't really utilised much, and it is just pure brute strength. It was a shame also that Matt Murdock never got back into the Daredevil outfit this season, and I thought he would at least for this fight be wearing the Daredevil costume. It definitely would have helped for the visuals of this fight as well, which I think may have made the fight seem a bit more cool, but also the fight felt awkward at times with Vanessa just standing there spectating. The writers have spent the last episode and a half building her up as actually quite an evil character, so you think she would have in some way tried to help Fisk in this fight. Perhaps he would have a gun laying about within the penthouse and she would have used it on either Bullseye or Daredevil, or she would have just got out of the room instead of just watching a quite scary fight right in front of her.
I'll discredit his testimony and take care of everything. I will handle it.
So let's move on to character actions within this episode. Fisk, I think everyone can agree, has been built up over the course of this season as a man who can't be trusted, manipulative and a master tactician who is always 3 steps ahead. Fisk considers all possible scenarios and will always have a fail-safe for every plan. So for this episode to suddenly make Fisk an idiot for an hour was the most confusing and frustrating thing for me about the finale. Okay, so let's talk about what made Fisk come across as an idiot and what made this episode feel rushed. So Agent Ray Nadeem in the previous episode is killed by Dex. Even though Fisk suggested simply framing him, which made sense, he decides to do both after Vanessa suggests killing him. I thought this was quite clever and made a lot of narrative sense to the character of Fisk. He's outsmarted everyone and kept himself clean in the process. However, Ray manages to outsmart him by recording a confession to his own crimes while implicating Fisk, Dex and Hatley as a dying declaration while waiting for Fisk's hitmen to come finish him off. Ray manages to get this video to his wife, who gets it to Foggy, who gets it to Karen, who gets it to her editor, who gets it to the world. Somehow Fisk was never able to see what was actually happening and stop this process of pass the parcel with the video. This seemed incredibly lazy. I would assume Fisk would have thought Ray might have kept something that incriminated him in some way and would have ordered a thorough search of Ray's house. However, this doesn't happen, even though it is quite an obvious thing to do, especially as Fisk thinks of every outcome. This is the same guy who staged an assassination attempt, arranged for house arrest at a hotel he'd secretly bought in a specific penthouse, he'd rigged with a secret passage to a communications hub, corrupted an entire FBI office, both during and after his incarceration, reconquered the organised crime structure of an entire city while being a prisoner, and gotten all the charges against him dropped and all of his convictions overturned so he could get married as a free man. He managed to get beaten by a man who had already tried to tell the world about Fisk in his own video confession, which you would have assumed he may have filmed. I guess Fisk just didn't think that after talking with lawyers, police officers and a jury, none of these conversations would have been documented. Do you see what I mean by this episode felt rushed? Okay, so I'm almost done knocking this episode, I swear. But there is a final point / plot hole I want to address.
Fisk. You let him turn you into a murderer. You think he's gonna let Julie get in the way?
Okay, so Matt's plan does make sense to take down Fisk, well, some sense. With the increased security after his initial entrance into the penthouse, he needs a way in. What better way than manipulating Bullseye to storming his way into the building and just basically walking in behind him, and then taking out Fisk with Bullseye, which is what I thought was going to happen. However, once Bullseye gets up to the hotel room and attempts to murder Vanessa, Matt seems first of all genuinely surprised to see Bullseye, even though he basically sent him there. Perhaps he thought he would get taken down before reaching the penthouse. But then how would Matt himself make it in? And number 2 begins to stop all of Bullseye's attacks. What was Matt's idea for Bullseye when sending him in? All Matt has managed to do is create a better chance of his demise with taking on Bullseye and Fisk together. I assumed incorrectly Daredevil and Bullseye would team up to defeat Fisk, as they have common ground for their hatred of him, and then perhaps Bullseye would attack Daredevil, setting up a second fight before police turn up and Bullseye escapes. I think that would have been really cool, but hey, what do I know? What also annoys me about Matt's plan is that he sent a psychopathic killer loose into a building where there are definitely innocent bystanders. Matt knows he will kill people remorselessly, as he's seen him at the church kill innocent bystanders. So Matt took a huge risk that a lot of people wouldn't die. Luckily for him, Bullseye decided to use mostly non-lethal methods on everyone in the building for some reason, even though this has never been established as a means for Bullseye to take on people with weapons. If Bullseye killed innocent people, that would be on Matt's hands, but I guess I am being a little harsh now, as of course the finale fight has to be set up somehow. There just appeared to be a lot of plot convenience within Matt's plan.
You keep my secret.
So the episode ends with around 13 minutes of everyone talking happily, discussing God and working together again, and everything is tied into a neat bow, which did really frustrate me. The finale, even though was a 50-minute long episode, managed to conclude the season's story in 37 minutes, with no build up to the big finale. The last 15 minutes is just closure, with everyone discussing what's happened and placing characters for future seasons and stories. It truly felt like the writers lost track of what episode they were at and had to rush out a quick ending for this series, or they had written themselves into a corner in regards to how good Fisk was and were unsure as to how Daredevil was actually supposed to defeat him. So before I end this video, I know I've knocked the Daredevil season 3 finale episode a lot in this video, but it wasn't terrible, it was just disappointing. The rest of the season is fantastic in my opinion, it's just a shame the weakest episode was the very last one of the series. The writers definitely took some risks with the fast pace of this episode, and sadly it didn't work. Daredevil definitely showed an improvement for Marvel Netflix, and for that I am extremely happy. It was an incredibly enjoyable season, so please don't take this video as I hate Daredevil season 3, as it's by far the opposite. I truly love this season, and I hope there are more made. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for watching.